Hi, everybody. Joe Cioffi here with Weather in 5 days in 5 minutes. And coming up tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, we're going to talk about severe weather risks in the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states for Friday, with the heavy rains that are still going on in South Florida, with flooding in many locations, a nice Father's Day weekend, and some heat in the long range. That's tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to start off with watches and warnings, and there's nothing much going on at all up and down the East Coast until you get to South Florida, where we have flood watches, flood advisories, special marine warnings. There were even a couple of tornado warnings earlier in a couple of counties. Likely to see some more flash flood warnings there. Excessive heat and heat advisories peppered in the southwestern part of the U.S. And other than a few areas reporting issues with some fog, everything seems to be a-okay here in the U.S. And on the satellite loop this afternoon, another little weak upper trough is moving through upstate New York, and that's producing some midday cloudiness that's moving through upstate New York down to about northern New Jersey and Long Island. The rest of the east is clear to no worse than some passing clouds. We have clear skies across the Ohio Valley. Some storms developing up in parts of Minnesota where severe weather is an issue today. And of course, you see the moisture in South Florida and the lightning strikes that are going on, indicative of rain and thunderstorms and some torrential downpours. And the radar bears that out too. As you can see, it's this narrow band running south of Tampa and south of Daytona Beach, and north of that southwestern corner of Florida, at least for the moment. And there's this east-west band that's just sort of training across the state and impacting places like Miami and Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, etc. So that's going to continue for the rest of today. The Storm Prediction Center, let me just back this up. As far as today is concerned, we have a slight to enhanced risk for severe weather up in northern Iowa, the eastern part of the Dakotas, and western Wisconsin. Enhanced risk up into northeastern Minnesota. And this, by the way, comes with a 2 to 5% tornado risk. Also, a 2% tornado risk in South Florida, where we have a marginal risk for severe weather there. For tomorrow, the risk area shifts to Missouri, so northern Missouri, southern Iowa, into western Illinois, slight risk pushing into Michigan, marginal risk further north from there, marginal risk also back through Kansas and eastern Colorado. And in this area, we have a 2% tornado risk. And in the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states, the day is Friday. That we could see some severe weather. We're starting off on their 3 day on day three forecast of a marginal to slight risk from southern New Hampshire down to about New York City, the northern third of New Jersey, into eastern and parts of southeastern Pennsylvania. And I imagine that when we see this tomorrow, we'll probably not see too much in the way of change, although I think you might see uh, a 2% tornado risk being indicated for some places. And as far as the rain is concerned, which has been substantial in South Florida, many areas have gotten at least a half a foot of rain, and some areas are going to get another half a foot of rain on top of that over the next 3 or 4 days. This is the 7 day outlook. So now we start to pick up the chance for heavy rains along the central and western Gulf Coast. And we should pay particular attention to areas in southeast Texas where 5 or more inches of rain are being forecast for places like Houston and Galveston. And they've been hit quite hard in the last 6 to 7 weeks with onslaughts of heavy rain there. Also seeing an inch and a half to up to 3 inches in parts of southern Minnesota, western Wisconsin, and northern Iowa. So until then, other than the patchy clouds, overall it's nice weather in the east. You see the rain in Florida and South Florida, still continuing into Thursday, maybe a little bit less, but it's still there. In the northeast and mid-Atlantic states and in the South Atlantic states, it's going to be a warm, sunny day. Temperatures into the 80s across the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states. Some places will probably see middle 80s. Now on Friday, we could see some temperatures approach 90 degrees and dew points going up into the 60s. And here comes the cold front for late in the afternoon and evening. The latest GFS models very bullish here on showers and thunderstorms late Friday afternoon into Friday evening. Once that passes, the front keeps on moving. High pressure builds in for the weekend. and the Father's Day weekend is looking good. Sunshine, low humidity, temperatures in the upper 70s to low 80s. Next week, as that high moves out, we're going to get into some hot and humid weather, and I think it's going to last pretty much all of next week. Not so much on Monday, but starting from Tuesday and beyond, I think we're going to be dealing with temperatures that will be climbing up into the 90s in many locations, especially away from the ocean. So don't forget tonight, the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast at 7:35 p.m. We'll see you then.